There we go.
We're live. Hello and welcome to another Nerdrotic recap podcast. Today we're talking about Legion Season 1, Episode 3, Nightmare on Memory Lane. What's the name of this episode? I've been trying to find it out.
I don't know, to tell you the truth.
Is it just Chapter 3? Does it just do chapters?
I think it might be just Chapter 3, yeah.
I went to other recaps and everyone had a different name for it, and I was just searching for the name of this episode and I couldn't find it. Anyway, so I'm your host, John Reed, and joining me, as usual, from San Diego, Dennis Bithoulkas. How's it going, Dennis?
Doing all right. How about you?
Good. I'm actually not the usual host for this podcast, but we lost Gary on Thursday nights and Wednesday nights, so we figured that this would be a good time slot to handle Legion. So that's where we're at now. I caught up on Episode 2 and Episode 3 just before we started recording. So I might be a little fuzzy on where the stoppage point is on what's Episode 2 and what's Episode 3, but there you go. So this episode, though, it kicks off with the robotic coffee maker telling the story of the stork that weaves gold for the fisherman, right?
Yeah, which is really weird.
It was super weird, but I did like it because it was a moment that was outside of David's perspective, right? Like we got this scene with Dr. Bird, and she just wants to, she keeps making coffee to hear the story over and over again. We find out later in the episode it's because it's her husband's who died's voice in the recording, and she just wants to hear her love talking to her. But this is kind of a cool beginning to the episode. It was a rebound from last episode, maybe right away.
Yeah, last episode, I know, kind of lost Gary on it, and I didn't like last episode either. The episode 2, just for some reason, it seemed very disjointed, and I know that was what they were trying to get at, but at the same time, it just seemed kind of inferior after the first episode, which was so good. Which I know you didn't like the first episode, so. So what did you think of the third episode coming into this?
So my issue with this show is that I want a show that has more of what the second part of the first episode was like the big fight escape scene. Mm-hmm. That was still the coolest thing we've seen on Legion so far, in my opinion. What this episode did was at least it gave us that cool shot of him exploring that one memory in the kitchen and discovering that he has this telekinesis power and pointing to this as like an example of it. And you see what led up to that. And I liked that aspect of this episode, working through that one problem that they were trying to solve with the memory doctor and Dr. Bird. So I like that they did a little bit of it. My issue with the series still is, though, that the whole structure, the whole concept of this show doesn't lend itself to like a superhero story, and so my expectation of what I want the show to be is never going to be what the show actually is. And so trying to reconcile that is sometimes difficult, but there's no denying that this was entertaining, interesting, well done, well acted, just well executed in general. So I would say I would give this episode a thumbs up. How about you?
Oh yeah, no, I really liked the third episode. It redeemed it after the second episode. Kind of going through his mind when Sid ends up going into his memories as well, and she's seeing exactly what David's seeing, because we see that Dr. Bird and I forget the guy's name who actually can bring them into the dreams.
Yes,
I forget his name, but when there are, Dr. Bird and the memory doctor, they both can't see what David is seeing, but she can. Sid could see.
Right. She sees the devil with the yellow eyes.
Yes.
The yellow-eyed devil.
And she also sees the walls being ripped open.
Yep.
And
she
things
sees
like
the
that.
Crazy, the world's angriest boy in the world come to life, which I thought was really interesting. Here's my other thing. So what I would love to explore with you, like we could go beat by beat through the episode, but to me it's kind of confusing at times, and just like not a ton's happening other than like cool imagery and moving like the and him sorting through his memories to figure out how to control his powers, right? Like that's essentially what the first two, the second and third episodes have been, is really just like
Yeah.
digging through his memories and trying to free him from the jail he's put himself in. But we find that maybe he hasn't put himself there, and there's some other entity that might be harming him mentally, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
the two things I would really love to explore with you are, who in this world do we think is a figment of his imagination that he's made real? Like maybe Sid and his drug addict friend. I forget her name.
Lenny.
Yeah, yeah, Lenny. And also, who are some aspects of Legion that we've seen in the comics that might be the devil with the yellow eyes? Because I've gone off the Mojo train from our discussion in the Premieres podcast, and I went online and I kind of researched different Legion sub personalities, they call them, that he's able to manifest from his mind. And I want to kind of dig into maybe some theories about the devil. So I don't know. What do you think? Is that a good idea for this one?
I think that's not a bad idea. I'm thinking the guy with the yellow eyes is actually the Shadow King.
So
Because
I
we
was
keep seeing the
thinking,
shadows coming in around him as he's
yes.
doing his evilness.
So I was with you on that one up until I like started thinking like, how would you depict the Shadow King in this show? And I think that they would stick closer to what the Shadow King kind of looks like in the comics. And he's never like a kind of bulbous man. He's usually a lot like a ghostly, like sharper in, I don't know how to describe it, but he's never really portrayed as like a blob of a character. You know, like I think that a lot of people thought it was Mojo because Mojo's this just like giant fat blob of yellow, right? Or
Yeah.
green. And that's kind of what this character is. And Shadow King has never been really presented in that way. He's always like he's always a lot more sharp or rocky or craggy or ghostly, right? Or sometimes he's just like a cool looking dude in a cape, you know, like he never really has taken on this look. And so that's the only thing. Like I feel like the power set and the MO is totally Shadow King, right? Like I totally see where everyone's coming up with that theory. I just think like if you're going to do Shadow King, you're probably not going to make it look like that. I don't know, do you disagree?
I don't know. I mean, they're going to take liberties with it. I know that. I don't know who
It
else
seems
it
like a
could be, to tell
weird
you the
like
truth.
liberty to take, right? When you have a really cool looking character to make him look really ugly.
Yeah, I mean, they could be trying to combine a couple different characters
Sure,
together as well.
that's what I'm thinking is happening here.
Yeah, I mean, it is Bryan Singer's production after all, so, and he sometimes bastardizes these things, so I could see that happening.
So there's two different, so where I want to go with this is there's two different eras of Legion sub personalities. There's like the initial Legion sub personalities that are all given numbers. Like he has this like in the comics he has this like armband that when he sees something manifesting, he types in a number. So like there's 115 and I don't know, some other ones. But then there's the next era of that they all get given names and they kind of show up as characters, and you don't know it's actually Legion because he's taken these things from his mind and uh turned them into like actual beings. And so one of the ones I wanted to throw out there is there's a character called Tyrannix the Abominable, and he's this green blob. He's got tentacles though, so that's a little bit different. And he's essentially and each of these sub personalities of Legion have different powers. And his this one character's powers are telepathy and astral projection. So he has the ability to project his mind into separate forms from his body, and he has the ability to read and communicate with minds of others, right? So I feel like those powers and the look of Tyrannix the Abominable might fit this whole thing. Plus, it's tied to the death of Charles Xavier. It's kind of one of the beings he creates when his father is killed in the comics. And so it's kind of an evil character, I think. So I don't know. Have you heard of Tyrannix the Abominoid? Is this something that you've explored
No,
at all?
I never really read Legion, the comic, so I honestly don't know anything about it, to
Okay.
tell you the truth. So I came into this completely fresh from the comics itself.
Yeah. So that's one I want to throw out there. I think that it might be a little too obscure, but Tyrannix might be where they're going. The other one I was thinking it might be is the main evil subpersonality of Legion is called Gestalt. And it's essentially a bunch of his other subpersonalities that have been like fused together into this evil entity that just screws with Legion in his mind all the time. And Gestalt he's got yellow eyes, but he's more he's not like one color. He's a little bit more humanoid rather than blobby. So this is
I would
another one I
probably
just want to
bet.
throw out there.
Yeah, I would probably bet that's going to be what it's going to be. It's going to be just Gestalt, more
Right.
than likely.
So Gestalt is he possesses the powers and so basically the subpersonalities that combine to make Gestalt are Tyrannix, the guy I just brought up,
Mhm.
Mycolo Jester, Delusionaut, Protozoan Porter, and the Origamist. And if you look at each of those guys, they all kind of look like the Blob in the show. So it could be any one of those, or it could be all of them combined to create Gestalt, and it'll get broken apart at some point. And I think that rather than Shadow King, which this totally could be Shadow King, but if it's not, I think this is where we're going. Like he has to break apart this one cluster of sub personalities, and then he's got to take on each of the ones that he breaks apart at some point. Like I
Yeah.
can see the show going that direction.
Oh no, I can see that too. I mean, that's actually not a bad place to start from, to tell you the truth.
Right. And essentially what happens in the comics is he has to break apart Gestalt to repair the damage that's been done to his psyche over the years. Like that's the Gestalt storyline. And I feel like that really is the storyline of the show.
That
So
sounds like what's happening. Yeah. So I mean, that's probably more than likely what's going on right now.
So tweet at me and Dennis or go over to facebook.com/nerdrotic podcast. Let us know where you think they're going. Who do you think the devil with the yellow eyes is, the yellow-eyed devil is in Legion? Is it Mojo? Is it Shadow King? Or is it one of these sub-personalities that the comics have dealt with over time? I'm curious. Like, that's the main thing I'm curious to see in this show.
What I got weirded out by this episode now, thinking about it, Claire is his name, the doctor that was helping him out, who has the other personality, the female personality. Everyone saw the female personality this episode
Right.
when they didn't see her in the second episode. So I'm like, wait a second, what the hell's going on? How do they all of a sudden see this other personality?
Right. Is it Legion creating that, or is it something to do with that character himself or herself?
Or are all these people part of different personalities in Legion's head?
Yeah. So that was the other place I wanted to go is, do you think anything is real at this point? Because it could be like, I've started thinking that, look, Sid can't touch anybody. So
Yeah.
that automatically says like, okay, something shady about this. Like maybe it is just her power, or maybe she's just a figment. And that's why you don't see her interacting with anything in this world. Like she's a projection of some sort. So I started thinking like, maybe Sid is just a figment. And then at the same time, maybe Lenny was just a figment. And if you just keep going, like all of these characters could just be part of Legion, David trying to deal with his psychoses.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, we were not going to know for a little while. I don't think we're going to know until at least halfway through this season.
If that, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, the whole thing with him and Sid projecting to where his sister is supposedly being held and interrogated. And what is it, the eye is what they call him?
Yes.
Finally seeing him and reaching out for him and them disappearing.
Yes.
So I don't, again, is that real? Is this, something that's actually happening? I'm leading to believe more on the lines that it actually is happening, that they are in Summerland. and that these aren't figments. There might be a few people that are figments of his
Right.
imagination, but I don't think everyone is.
I don't think that you'd have a TV show if everything was. I think that that would be a huge bummer if you got to the end and like it was all just him in a mental hospital somewhere and
Yeah,
it's all in his head. But I do think that some of these have to be, and I also think that part of Legion's power is that he can take mental constructs and actualize them. So he's essentially creates real people out of his mind, and any of
yeah,
these characters, could be that. It doesn't all have to be in his head for all these people to be constructs of Legion's powers, because he's just so powerful in that way.
yeah. That's why I was thinking Lenny um, wasn't real, but he did create her
Right.
to. That was his drug
Friend.
persona, if you will,
Yes. His junkie
and
persona.
yeah, and that's why his mom didn't get too upset with Lenny being there, if you noticed,
Right.
because it was like she knew Lenny, and
Right.
it wasn't like it was David's friend. It was just like she knew who Lenny was. It
Right.
was just it was kind of an odd, interaction. But again, it was his memory too. So who knows when he was on drugs?
Yeah. Meanwhile, I get so claustrophobic when I see people like uh shuffling through air ducts. Like I start getting that feeling like I'm being buried alive. It's just so awful. It's and I like try to like take myself to a place where I'm like, okay, when they were filming this, it's not a real air duct. Like there's openings on both sides, and like, okay, let me just think about the production of this. Like, but it just freaks me out to see like, oh my God, she can't turn around. She can only keep going forward because you don't even have space to turn around. Like this is awful. It's just the worst. It's the worst. But anyway, it's a side tangent. So what else about this episode did you like more than episode 2?
I'm sorry. Say that again.
What else about this episode did you like more than episode 2 of the show?
Oh,
What else redeemed it for you?
I'm trying to think. You do learn a little bit more about his past, even though it's not a lot. Um, but you start to see that he and Lenny had a physical relationship,
Yes.
which is also kind of weird that if he created her as a figment of his imagination and
Yeah.
he's screwing a figment of his imagination or an aspect of his persona, very, very, very weird.
Wouldn't that be cool if you could create your own dream girl and then actually be with them in real life?
That's just a little too weird.
This show's super weird. So, okay, so the
I
other
like
thing
it. Don't get me wrong.
I know you do. Oh God. So this show, though, one of the weaknesses here is more needs to like happen. Like I
Yeah.
like that we're exploring Legion and his powers and his mind, but all the show can't survive if it's just constantly wading into,
Mhm.
how do we fix Legion? Because we know that he's never really going to be fixed. So like, what where do you see this going? Do you see this going to a place where it stops being about that and starts having some actual plot to it?
Yeah, they're gonna have to address, his sister being taken, and they're gonna have to do something about it because he's not gonna stick around waiting for them to, talk it all out
Yeah.
while his sister.
What's his motivation here in taking his sister? Do we know yet?
Well, they this or what is it? I forget what the name of the other.
Hospital? Or oh
Yeah,
yeah.
what the guys are called? District 3 or I forget what they're called.
Sure. Yeah.
And
The other the kind of militant
the bad
entity on the
guys.
show. Yeah.
Yes. So basically, they took her because she knows that he has powers, and they're interrogating her because they think that she has some kind of special link to him, which she obviously does because David can hear her whenever
Right.
she's calling out in pain, all that kind of stuff, and
Division
crying out.
3.
Division 3. There we go. I knew it was something 3. So, um, and so that's exactly what they're doing. The eye is trying to figure out where he is by that's why they have the leeches and all that kind of stuff. They're going to try and harm her in order to get her to make a contact with David so that they can hone in on where David is. As Dr. Bird said, she goes, don't ever go out there again, because if you do, they can find out, get you, or they can find out where we're at and come and kill us all.
Right. So this idea to sedate them, everybody, and go into David's mind.
Worst idea
what
ever.
The fuck, man? Like, who is like, okay, this guy's got a crazy brain that locks us out at times, and like all this crazy shit is going on. Let's just sedate everyone so we're trapped inside that for a long period of time and see what happens. Like,
well, it was supposed to be enough sedation that not that they were going to go under, but that they could that he could relax his mind, his defenses is what it was supposed to be. That his defenses were too high, and his subconscious obviously is kicking in.
Right. The world's angriest boy in the world tries to eat Dr. Bird's hand at one point. That was horrific, right?
Well, yeah, it crushes it in that book, and mangles it all up. And
oh my God, it's so nuts. This show is really, it's a mind fuck. It really is.
Yeah, it is. But it's also, I don't know. In the next 2 episodes, it needs to do something to change itself. I think if it doesn't do anything by episode 5, other than be in David's mind, there's gonna be a lot of problems.
Yeah, I feel like we need to get to a point with this show where he's like out in the world and he's able to like manifest different personalities, and we get to meet those characters out in the real world in some way. You know, like whether it's going on a mission to get his sister back or whatever, and we meet characters like I don't know, some of his other sub personalities that he creates out there to save her. Like, we need something like that where we start seeing him take a little bit of control over his powers. I thought that that's where this episode was going, right? Like, this episode really did seem like it was going to get to a point where, yeah, they haven't fixed him, but at least he has a little bit more control than he had at the beginning. But where we really end up is like, fuck, I don't think we can fix him. Like, that's really where we get to. And it's just like, oh, Jesus Christ. Like, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to get to a place where this character is able to drive story instead of be the story,
Yeah. The one part I did that made me laugh for some reason, I don't know why, it was Lenny when she's talking to David about his sister when he's strapped in the chair, and he goes, when Claire says, "Well, think about something stressful and try not to damage the equipment."
Yeah.
And Lenny, he conjures up Lenny, and they're like, wait a minute. His subconscious is actually the verbal cue in his brain is activated. He's having a conversation, but he's not saying anything. And that was when he was talking to Lenny. And Lenny's like, we've got to find Sue. He goes, right now, a bunch of commandos could be cornholing your sister.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Lenny's definitely the personality that like ratchets up his
anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all him causing that, which is psychologically, this show is very interesting to think about. I just am, I wonder if that's enough to sustain us for a longer period of time.
Yeah, like I said, it needs to go a little further. I mean, we need to get past this being in his mind.
Yeah, so where do you think we're going with the next episode?
I don't know, to tell you the truth.
Do you think they're going to go and try to infiltrate? So where is District 3 right now? Where are they hiding out? Do we know?
Division 3?
Yeah, Division 3, yes.
Yeah, so you got the same disease I did on that one.
Yeah.
They're hiding in some old... Yeah, they're holding in some abandoned asylum, obviously.
Yeah, maybe something attached to that other psychiatric facility that he was in at the beginning of this
season. I wouldn't be surprised. Gary and I were noting from the first episode that the room that they took Sue into has no arms on the clock. There were no hands on the clock at all, so to show that it was timeless. There's a couple other things too that show that it's all run down and a little bit older.
Right. Yeah, the other thing that I think this show isn't doing the greatest job of is the 70s time period that they're in. It's the 70s or 60s or 70s.
We don't know for sure, honestly, because it's still fairly timeless. We don't know if they're in the 70s. We don't know if they're in the 90s. It's just it's very timeless for the most
Yeah.
part, and I'm
Yeah.
kind of liking that. To tell you
You're
the
digging
truth,
it?
yeah, I like that you can't
Yeah.
tell what time period it's in.
I have some issues with it. I just think that it's uh it's clearly of a time. I just don't know. I feel like it's more of like a lack of execution on like a 60s or 70s theme rather than like existing in any timeless fashion.
What they're doing, they're kind of playing with the mind, kind of thing, where they're going more for um, what's happening in the scene than the actual minutia of it, like what people are wearing, what time of day it, or what time period it is, what's on TV or something like that. And I kind of like that a little bit. It is still part of the mind, if you will,
Yeah.
in that you're dealing more with the abstract and not on the particulars.
So speaking of, there's also a sub personality of Legion called Chronodon, who is a yellow blob character, but he's got a clock as a face, and his power is time manipulation. So he warps reality and bends time. So that could be another aspect of his personality that's happening here.
And
He's
we probably could have seen a little bit of that too, when we see David breaking into his doctor's office, stealing
yes,
drugs, and then he's replaying one of his sessions with the doctor, and he's seeing it kind of like holograms, like Star Wars holograms, almost in a way.
totally. Um, God, there's just so many crazy like uh sub personalities of Legion. Like I'm really curious to see. Like there's a clown. There's one just called Clown. That's like this really creepy clown character. And there's one called Mycolo Jester, who also becomes part of Gestalt, and uh he's just basically a cloud of toxic spores around like a yellow blob. There's a lot of yellow blob type characters. So, I think that they did a good job of picking one that could be any of these if they are going with, you know, Legion constructs as the bad guy right now.
I'm
Um,
thinking Gestalt's going to be the bad guy, and just having him break him apart.
yeah,
I think
which
that's what the
is
whole first season's supposed to be about.
yes. And I also think that a character we're going to get soon because they're showing a lot about this drug addiction, and he has a sub personality called Oxy, which is like a junkie
Hmm.
character.
That might be
Um,
Lenny.
yeah, maybe Lenny is Oxy. That's a good call. That's a really good call. Without the Oxy tablets for legs,
Yeah,
like Oxy has. That's the other thing is these characters that are sub personalities are all really really weird looking, for the most part, unless they kind of just look like David himself. Do you think we're ever going to get to a point where he has that cool like tall hair that Legion has in the comics?
I've never seen it. I you know,
Oh, so Legion has hair that's like this big, like uh
like kind of like
tall,
kid from Kid and Play.
yeah, kind of like a flat top, but like really tall. Um,
Okay.
and it's kind of his signature hairstyle. And it would be cool to see them do something of that, or even allude to it with one of these characters in his head that just has this like giant flat top hair. Um, yeah, I would definitely recommend to people who are into this show just Google Legion sub personalities and just look at all of them, because even without the comic book like background, I think it'll show you kind of where they have the potential to go with some of this. Like there's just a straight up like evil David called Lucas. There's Metallics the Untamer. There's Styx, who is this like uh devil, not devil looking, he looks kind of like an assassin, like a bald assassin with like a skeleton face kind of a thing, who's probably going to come up and be a bad guy at some point. He's one of the higher profile ones. There's a reality where Charles Xavier is actually one of Legion's sub-personalities. So they could do a lot of crazy stuff with this. And I think that the show so far has hinted that it's willing to go there with the yellow eyes.
No, I'm enjoying it so far.
There's a pirate. There's like this pirate dude. So yeah, no, I'm curious. So what else? This episode was, whereas I liked it more than the second episode, I do feel like it was a transition episode where it's really about where the show is going to go next and if he's going to have any control. Do you think they've gone to a place where he's going to have a modicum of control over his telekinesis?
I think what they're going to do is they're going to. I get the feeling that he's going to find different power sets as we go along. And it's going to be as he works through whatever issues he has. And then he's going to find, okay, I've got this power set or I've got that power set. And it is going to be tied into different personalities, like you said. And I think that's how they're going to work it out.
Right. Like he has to come to terms with an aspect of his personality and like section it off into its own being to free himself of that psychosis. Right.
Yeah.
I just wish they could get there a little faster. Like, I feel like they could get there a little faster. Like we could already be at that point where he's realized that Lenny is a construct and she's his friend and he's freed himself of that aspect of himself.
But also at the same time, I think they're having fun with it right now. And like I said, if they don't move out of his mind by like episode 5, they're going to lose a lot of people. So I think after this next step, I could almost guarantee by the middle of this next episode, episode 4, we're going to have some kind of resolution of his mind.
Agreed. Oh, no. No.
What was that?
I lost my Zencaster link. Well, we can rip the audio from this, I think, or Gary might be able to.
I still have mine going.
Fuck.
Not backing it up?
You guys there?
That's okay. Yeah, we're okay. Are you able to rip audio from this?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Anything that goes on the YouTube, but you might want to restart your Zencaster unless you want me to just keep recording this.
No, you can. I'm going to start the next one in. Okay, so wait, let's just say our goodbyes really quick.
Okay, I'll shut up.
Okay, so yeah, stay tuned. Next week we'll be back to cover episode 4, chapter 4 of Legion. Check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Nerdrotic podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Nerdrotics and on Instagram at Nerdrotic is our handle there. You can follow me at JohnReed16. Dennis is at Daforce, DAFORCE. Please subscribe to us on iTunes. Leave us a star rating there or even write us a review. It helps us a lot. So stay tuned. We'll be back. Bye, everybody.
And don't let the door hit your ass on the way out, America.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.
Okay. Thanks, Gary.